So let's get right into it. We're always hearing about building responsible AI, but what does that actually mean when the rubber meets the road? Well, it turns out the US government has put together a really detailed playbook for it. It's called the NIST AI Risk Management Framework. And today, we're going to break down exactly what it is, why it exists, and how it all works. First things first, you have to appreciate just how much AI is already out there changing everything. I mean, this isn't sci-fi anymore, right? It's a real, powerful force that's actively transforming our world, from driving cars and discovering new medicines to making our energy grids way more efficient. The potential here, the potential to solve some of humanity's biggest problems is just massive. But, and this is the big but, with all of that incredible power comes a really important question. Are we actually steering this ship in the right direction? Because the exact same technologies that could do so much good also come with some pretty serious risks if we're not careful. And that gets us to the absolute core of the issue with AI development, trying to navigate that razor's edge between its promise and its peril. It's a huge balancing act, and honestly, it requires a totally new way of thinking about tech. So why is this so tricky? Well, AI doesn't just exist in a vacuum, right? It's what the NIST framework calls socio-technical, and that's just a fancy way of saying it's a feedback loop. You know, our own human values and biases, they get baked into the AI, and then the AI's decisions turn around and start shaping our society. It's a two-way street, which makes managing all the potential downsides incredibly complicated. And those downsides can cause real, actual harm. We're not just talking about a program crashing. We're talking about harms that can affect individuals, through things like discrimination or even threats to their safety. They can totally wreck a company's reputation, and they can even impact entire ecosystems, whether that's our environment or the global financial system. The stakes are really high. Okay, so what is it about AI specifically that makes it so different, so much riskier than the kind of software we're all used to? Let's unpack that. This chart really nails the difference. See, traditional software, it's all based on explicit code we write. It's logical. If it breaks, you can usually hunt down the exact line of code that caused the problem. But AI? AI is a whole different beast. It learns from data, and that data can be biased or old or just plain wrong. Its performance can suddenly change in ways you never saw coming. And then there's the whole black box problem, where a lot of the time we literally can't see why it made a particular choice. And get this, it can even develop emergent properties, which are surprising new skills it wasn't even trained for. Imagine a language model that suddenly teaches itself to write computer code. That can lead to failures that were just impossible to predict. So all these unique challenges, they really call for a unique solution. And that is exactly where the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, comes in. They have created a framework specifically designed to help us build trust in this new world of AI. And in their own words, the whole point is to be a resource. So don't think of this as some heavy-handed rulebook. It's more like a safety playbook, a guide for anyone who's building or even just using AI. It's all about helping people navigate the risks and really push for responsible innovation. Now, this is a super important point. It's flexible. This is not a law. It's completely voluntary. And it's designed to be used by pretty much anyone in any industry, no matter how big or small you are. From a tiny startup tinkering in a garage to a giant federal agency. It's a tool you can adapt to fit whatever you're working on. So, what's the end game? What are we aiming for? It's to create what NIST calls trustworthy AI. And that's not just some buzzword. It's a very specific idea built on these key characteristics. A trustworthy system has to be valid and reliable, safe, secure and resilient, accountable and transparent, explainable and interpretable, privacy enhanced, and, this is a big one, fair, which means it's actively designed to avoid making harmful biases worse. And this diagram, it really shows you how all those pieces click together. See valid and reliable at the bottom? That's the foundation. If the system doesn't even work right, then nothing else matters. And notice how accountable and transparent runs up the side? That's because it's a cross-cutting theme. You need it to achieve all the other goals. It holds the whole thing together. Okay, so that covers the what and the why. Now let's get into the how. How do you actually do this? Well, the framework gives us a really practical 4-step process to follow. So the heart of the framework is this continuous cycle of 4 functions. Right there in the middle, you've got govern. That's all about creating the right culture and structure for managing risk. And that informs everything else in this loop of map, measure, and manage. Let's break down how this actually works. The best way to think about this is like you're planning a huge expedition. First, you govern. This is your mission control. You get the team together, you set the rules, you decide on the values that are going to guide every decision. It's the essential prep work. Then you map. You get out there and scout the terrain. You figure out exactly where this AI is going to operate, and you identify every possible danger you can think of. Third, you measure. This is like sending out your scientific probes. You run tests, you analyze data, you track everything so you have hard numbers on the risks you just mapped out. And finally, you manage. You take all that intel and you act on it. You figure out what the biggest threats are and you decide what to do. Mitigate them, avoid them, whatever it takes. And this isn't a one-and-done thing. It's a cycle you do over and over again. Now, I know this might sound like a lot of corporate jargon, but believe me, the reasons for getting this right go way beyond some companies' bottom line. When you get right down to it, this whole framework isn't just another checklist for developers. It's a blueprint for building public trust. For AI to really take off and help us, people have to believe it's being built safely with their best interest at heart. You could even call this framework a key part of the social contract for AI. And the benefits for any organization that actually uses this are very real. It helps you make much smarter go/no-go decisions about deploying an AI in the first place. It builds a real culture of safety and responsibility. And it pushes you to actually talk to the communities who are going to be affected by this tech, making sure their voices are heard. So in the end, the NIST framework gives us this incredibly valuable map for navigating the really tricky landscape of AI risk, especially now as these systems get more and more powerful. But it does leave us with one last, really big question. A map can show you how to get somewhere safely, but it can't tell you where you should go. And that destination, the kind of future we actually want to build with AI, well, that's something we all have to figure out together.